What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time to give you my top 10 most underrated teams heading into the 2023 college football season. Basically, how this video is going to work, we're going to give you 10 teams that are going to be probably underrated heading into this 2023 season. Teams that may have high expectations, maybe low expectations. Maybe they could surprise some people this year, but maybe also disappoint some people. But these are 10 teams that I think really have high expectations, and also maybe some teams that could surprise some people. And this is basically my list. I didn't really get it online or anything like that, so we'll do the opposite tomorrow. Today we're going to give you the top 10 most underrated teams for 2023 and the top 10 most overrated teams for tomorrow. So we'll give you those overrated teams heading into tomorrow. Basically, the underrated is teams with low expectations perhaps. Maybe they are going to surprise some people, and these are basically my best teams that I could think of. So, like I said, we're going to do the opposite tomorrow. We're going to give you the underrated teams for today and give you the overrated teams for tomorrow. So, let's get right into it here with my top 10 underrated teams heading in for the 2023 season. We'll start with number 10, and we'll start with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I think, was overrated last year. I think they're underrated heading into 2023 this season. This is a team that I did overrate last year. I didn't expect them, to win maybe 10 or 11 games last year, and they didn't quite live up to that expectation that I think they were not going to. They went 9-4 last year, so with their record from last year, maybe it could be a big improvement for Notre Dame. And with that being said, after the bowl win against South Carolina, I think this team has high expectations for 2023. If you look at their roster, they do have Sam Hartman coming in at quarterback from Wake Forest. I mean, Marcus Freeman kind of turned this program around from last season. It was a big improvement from them, but overall, it was still not a good season for Notre Dame. We knew the schedule was going to be tough for them, but they did get some quality wins on that schedule and multiple upsets as well. Now, if you look at their schedule this year, they do play Ohio State in the non-conference. They get them at home this year, and they do play, of course, Clemson in their non-ACC team or something like that as well on the road this year. But Notre Dame, I think, is, in my opinion, underrated heading into 2023. Definitely you don't want to sleep on Notre Dame here on this top 10 list. Let's go to the number 9. Number 9 is Miami. Miami, I think, is underrated heading into 2023. I think a lot of people were overrating this team last year, and I kind of felt the same way. I was high on Miami last year, and I think this team was kind of overrated, and they obviously did not live up to the expectations last year. This is a team I had winning the Coastal Division last year in the ACC. They went 5-7, though, instead. So they were definitely overrated last year in 2022. This year, I think they're underrated, in my opinion. I think they'll be a better team than they were last year. Definitely, probably not like a 9-win team, perhaps, but I think they'll live up to those expectations this season. But maybe Miami could turn things around. Maybe this is a team that finally turns it around. Maybe last year was just a fluke, and maybe they do turn it around here in 2023. So, again, no divisions in the ACC this year, so it will be tough for Miami to get to that championship game, but I think Miami definitely has what it takes to turn things around in 2023. That's why they're underrated for me heading into this season. Number 8 is Oregon State. I expect this team to be the dark horse contender in the Pac-12. This is a team that went 10-3 overall last year. They definitely surprised me with how many wins they had last year. I think I, kind of overrated this team as well from last year. People were not expecting this Oregon State team to be a really good team last year, and also not even a contender in the Pac-12, but they definitely were. And they were really close to winning the Pac-12 from last year. They have a chance to do that this season. And you're talking about an Oregon State team that has plenty of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. You got DJ Ogilvy coming over from Clemson. How helpful will he be for that offensive side of the ball for Oregon State? And I think this team has what it takes, to be the dark horse contender in the Pac-12. Not quite the winner, but one of those dark horse contenders in the Pac-12. So I kind of expect Oregon State to be a challenge for that Pac-12 championship spot. So I'm going to say that Oregon State is definitely underrated heading into 2023. That's why from last year they were really good Pac-12 contenders. Moving on to number 7, Louisville. Louisville, I think, is really underrated for 2023. You look at their record from last year, they went 8-5. Yes, that's a good season for Louisville, but if you look at their schedule for 2023, like we did those top 10 easy schedules a couple days ago, you can go back and look at that schedule. Again, no North Carolina, Clemson, or Florida State on the schedule. And that's what makes Louisville so underrated heading into 2023. Yes, they do have a new head coach with Jeff Brom, but I think this Louisville team will definitely be motivated with him coming into 2023. I'm kind of expecting Louisville to be a challenger in the ACC and perhaps maybe a dark horse contender. I don't think they're going to get to the ACC championship, but you never know about the Cardinals. Maybe they could be a sneaky good team in the ACC. And I guess, you can call them overrated perhaps, but I think I'm going to call them underrated for this season. I mean, I'm liking what I'm seeing from Louisville so far. And, of course, with Jeff Brom as the head coach and the schedule, that's why they're so underrated here in 2023. Number 6 is Iowa. Iowa was overrated last year, in my opinion. I think this year they're definitely underrated heading into 2023. 8-5 record last year for this Iowa team. They definitely were sluggish on the offensive side of the ball. If they can get that offense going this year, this team, in my opinion, could challenge for the Big Ten championship and also the Big Ten West. I think this Iowa team, though, they were definitely overrated last year, just like I mentioned, and I think they're definitely underrated this time. And Kay McNamara coming in as the transfer for Michigan definitely helps them out, and they do got plenty of weapons on that offensive side of the ball, and definitely that defensive side of the ball as well. So Iowa, I think after a sluggish offensive team from last year, they definitely will improve on the outside of that ball there, on the inside of that ball there, and I think Iowa is definitely deserved to be an underrated team for 2023. They end up here at number 6. To the top 5 now, at number 5 is Oklahoma. Oklahoma is underrated in my opinion. Last year, I did think they were overrated. This is a team that I still had a chance to go to the Big 12 championship last year because I thought they were still that top team in the Big 12. But out of nowhere, TCU and Kansas State just really surprised us overall, and Oklahoma just didn't really live up to those expectations that I thought they would. But they went 6-7 last year. I think they're definitely better than that record from last year. I think this will be a better team this season. You got Dylan Gabriel coming back at quarterback, probably one of the strongest throwing quarterbacks in the Big 12. But you do have to play Texas on the schedule, which is always tough every single year if you're an Oklahoma fan. But this year is their last year in the Big 12, so they want to make the Big 12 really count before they head to the SEC next year. So Oklahoma is definitely underrated in my opinion. I think with all the, with Dylan Gabriel coming back at quarterback, it definitely helps them out. So that's how they ended up here at number 5 for this top 10 list. Moving on to number 4, Washington. So we are back to the Pac-12. Washington is definitely underrated heading into 2023. Yes, this is a team that's coming off an 11-2 record from last year, but I mean, you probably can call them overrated, but this team has a lot of production coming back. Probably one of the most returning production in the Pac-12 this season. This is a Pac-12 championship contender, and this is also maybe a playoff contender. You got 4 teams in there that are battling it out for maybe a playoff spot in the Pac-12. You got Oregon, you got USC and Utah there. Now, Utah, USC, and Oregon are not on this list, but, I think Washington definitely deserves to be on this list just because of the production they have coming back this season. And this is a team a couple years ago that went 4-8 in 2021. This year, or actually last year, they went 11-2, and things could be even better for Washington. So Washington definitely underrated heading into 2023, and that's my number 4 underrated team. Moving on to number 3, South Carolina. South Carolina is definitely a team that you don't want to sleep on in 2023. Yes, they do have a pretty tough schedule, but this team, I think, could pretty much challenge in the SEC. Not saying they're going to challenge Tennessee or Georgia or anything like that. They did beat Tennessee last year, so maybe that's the only team that they really can challenge, but definitely not Georgia. Maybe this is the second or third best team in the East this year. Going 8-5 last year, Shane Beamer's really turned this program around. Yes, they have a pretty tough schedule. They do play North Carolina and Clemson both on the schedule, and that makes it a lot tougher. And then obviously Georgia and Texas A&M both on the road, and Tennessee on the road as well. Yeah, South Carolina, though, I think is still a well-motivated team. They do have talent on both sides of the ball, and Spencer Rattler coming back really makes a difference here for this South Carolina team. And if you watch my schedule those toughest schedule videos from yesterday, South Carolina did have the toughest schedule in the country. So I think South Carolina, though, Louisville, is still a good team enough to, to have a winning season. I'm not saying they're going to be bad this year. I think the Gamecocks will live up to the expectations, perhaps, but they're number 3 on this list. South Carolina definitely underrated in 2023. Moving on to number 2, LSU. So we stay in the SEC. LSU is definitely underrated heading into 2023. This is a team that I did overrate last year in 2022. This is a team that I did not expect, to maybe get to 10 wins last year. But instead they did get to 10 wins, and it started off with that first game against Florida State. They were sluggish in that game, and then, of course, sluggish against Tennessee, but they finished the season strong. And they also made the SEC championship. So you're talking about an LSU team that's now competing with Alabama and obviously close to Georgia, but also you're talking about every SEC West team that could have a chance to win the SEC West this year. That West division is going to be wide open in the SEC. But as of right now, I think LSU is the best team right now in that division. But Alabama's not far behind, and so is Ole Miss. So LSU. But definitely LSU, coming off the season they had last year, they're definitely underrated in my opinion. I think Brian Kelly will be ready for another great season for this LSU team. And like I said, a 10-4 record last year is going to get you underrated in my opinion. But they're not the most underrated team in college football this year. The number 1 most underrated team heading into 2023 for me is going to be the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin is the most underrated team heading into 2023. Looking at this Wisconsin team, Luke Fickell coming in as the head coach, there's definitely high expectations for this team. Now, Wisconsin does play Washington State on the schedule in the non-conference. They do get that game on the road, but that's a very winnable game. And you get Ohio State at home. I mean, their schedule really sets up nicely to have a really good season. And also, this is a team that can probably win the Big Ten West. You never know about Wisconsin, perhaps. This is a team that's coming off a 7-6 record. There should be more wins than they were last year for Wisconsin. I expect them, to maybe be an 8 or 9 win team this year, but maybe I'm overrating this team a lot more, or maybe I'm underrating this team a lot more than expected. But I think Wisconsin is definitely a team that you don't want to sleep on. In 2023, I think with Luke Fickell, though, coming in, the hype is for real for the Badgers. And last year, the hype was for real there. But I think they were overrated last year. This year, though, I think they're definitely underrated. So they come in here as the number 1 most underrated team in 2023. And those are my top 10 most underrated teams for 2023. What do you think about this top 10 list? What do you think about these teams in the underrated category? What else team do you think is most underrated heading into 2023? Again, tomorrow we'll do the opposite. We're going to do the top 10 most overrated teams for tomorrow. Again, we're trying to get some off-season content out there before we start those predictions in the month of May, and we're trying to get some more off-season videos out there before we do those predictions, like I said. But let me guys know what you think about this list. Do you agree or disagree with this underrated list? And stay tuned here for more sports content on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.